Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic: photograph the land of fire and ice. Ultimate Iceland Photo Expedition. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Eddie Savage. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Take it away, Eddie.
Well, thanks, Rob, and hello, everybody. It's great to be presenting this fantastic trip for you today. The Ultimate Iceland Photo Expedition is an extraordinary trip around Iceland. I got to do two of them last year, and I'll do the two Ultimate Iceland Photo Expeditions that are scheduled for this year as well. Iceland is very near and dear to me, and it's such an exciting trip. Every day is so different. So a little bit about myself. Um, I realize I don't have my webcam on today. I'm having some technical troubles with that, and this really would have been nice if I, put a picture of myself so you could recognize me. Um, my apologies for not including that. Anyways, my name's Eddie Savage. I've been with NatHab since 2016. I've been traveling to Iceland to do these expeditions for a few years now, and yeah, I'm on Vancouver Island today, in my hometown of Nanaimo, and away we go. So what I'm going to try to go over today basically is we're going to start kind of with the juicy trip specific advice. That's going to be gear. That's going to be some packing tips. I'll give you kind of the lowdown of what camera equipment that I'm intending to bring and what I find most useful on the trip. Um, and then, yeah, I've got probably, I don't know, dozens and dozens of slides, mostly just pictures from the trip and from the sites that we're going to, so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect from a visual point of view. And then at the end, I'll leave a little bit of time to answer your questions. So let's get started. So an introduction to this photo expedition. It is, as it says here on the screen, an in-depth photographic exploration of Iceland. Every single day provides an array of different photo opportunities, the landscape. But one way that I kind of look at the landscape and the way that the route is planned is from day one till day 16. Each day, it's the landscape changes so quickly and so rapidly that everything is different. Of course, we're going to have changing weather, different atmospheric effects to help benefit our photography as well. But every day has its own highlights and a really diverse array of photos to take. So that's really cool. We're moving quite a lot on this trip for that reason. Throughout the trip, we're going to utilize an assortment of boats. So we have ribs or rigid hull inflatable boats, Zodiacs that we'll be taking for a couple of our excursions. As well, we're going to have 4x4s. We've got two Super Jeep excursions. Right at the very beginning of the trip, we'll have a helicopter that'll take us up and over the area to the north and to the east of Reykjavik. And then we also have a plane near Skaftafell for a really creative photography day and experience there. But definitely a highlight of this trip is the group size. So the groups here, they're smaller than our typical trips. The trip is longer, it's more in depth, of course, but the group size is small. There's lots of space on the bus. They're 18 passenger buses, and we've got, I think, maximum 9 people on this expedition. But basically what that gives us is it's a lot more flexible, not only for space inside the bus, but just, where we can stop, how long we can stop for. Everything on this trip is focused around photography opportunities, and that's really cool for the photographer. So a really big thing that I recognized in some of the first trips that I went to Iceland is like, okay, how are we going to get the blue hour, the golden hour, that kind of thing? And being around 64 degrees north, 66 degrees north, sunsets are extraordinarily difficult. The sun does get low in the sky, but you've got to be up really, really late to actually catch that sunset. And you need to be in a place where the weather's cooperating with you. Um, it is summertime, but Iceland is still an island situated in the North Atlantic and is still, it gets regular kind of rainy weather, windy weather, all that kind of stuff, cloudy weather, overcast, fog, etc. It can all happen. So we basically look at the day, we look at what's scheduled for the day, and then make a decision. Or decisions change throughout the day, but basically we're typically going for later evenings and later mornings. So what that means is, we're probably going to check out of the hotel between 10 and 11 a.m. And then be on the road, moving to our next spot, taking some photos along the way, and then after dinner on a lot of these days, we'll be going out again or staying out, and having dinner in the field. These later evenings, basically, they're twofold. One of the things that they do for us is allows us to get better light, but also something that I recognize as a photographer is, some of this, Iceland's extraordinarily popular, and most of the day trippers, people going out to these sites, the some of the buses that are traveling around Iceland with lots of people on them, they're operating from about 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. So any hours that we can spend after 6 p.m. out in the field, it becomes a different Iceland. It's the light is way more accommodating for our photography needs, and there's a lot less foot traffic on a lot of the trails that we're going to, a lot of places we're going to. So the goal is basically throughout the whole trip, we're going to be pretty flexible with our timings, except for some rigid timings which we've already organized. But we're going to stay flexible to make sure that we're getting to places for good light, and away from lots of people to have a very unique and special experience exploring Iceland. Now, I'm going to just jump right in here. So the weather is a real thing. We will experience the weather in Iceland. Um, like I was saying, we're 64 to 66 degrees north. A lot of Iceland has, so kind of like subalpine or alpine terrain. You're surrounded on all sides by the cold North Atlantic Ocean. There are some areas where trees manage to grow, kind of little microclimates. But typically, an Icelandic summer is you're going to have some sunshine, you're going to have some rain, you're going to have some high winds, you're going to have a mixture of all of that kind of stuff. And so I was thinking about, oh, how do I best describe how to dress for the weather in Iceland? And I decided what better way than to uh, take this picture of three Icelandic guides that were working with us. Ragna in the blue jacket. Ragna will be our driver for our Icelandic or the photo expeditions. And then Inko there in the orange is one of our super cheap drivers, and another gentleman. They're all really good friends that were out with us on one of our expedition days. So what this means for us, or what this means for you, is basically look how they are dressed, and let's work with that. So we have a rain jacket. Important to have a good rain jacket, not just for protection from the rain, but also as a windbreaker. So it can be 75 Fahrenheit in the sun, but if it's windy, it's going to feel more like 40, especially if that wind is coming off one of the ice caps, or from the sea. It's going to get cold really fast. So having a windbreaker just to cut the wind makes a really big difference in our comfort level. Then look at their footwear. So this day, I will say they're wearing the footwear for one of our longer walks. This was to the Aski caldera and area, but they've got hiking boots on, hiking shoes on. So important to have hiking shoes, um, or hiking boots. Preferably something that has a bit of ankle support for you, because the volcanic terrain that we walk over sometimes can be quite uneven, and just having that extra support super nice. So waterproof boots with some ankle support is kind of your more extreme footwear. And then for regular everyday stuff, I'm usually wearing a pair of hiking shoes. That just is the most comfortable. So I have two pairs of footwear. One of them is my sturdier hiking boot for the more difficult terrain we walk, and then the other one is a pair of hiking shoes. So they have good grip. They're a lot more comfortable, especially if we're doing a bunch of short stops during the day, and we're not walking super far. We're just doing maybe we're doing 4 or 5 stops in a day where we're going to walk, you know, 500 yards at each place. Um, it's nicer just to have a lighter pair of footwear for the constant in and out of the vehicle for that. Um, and then you see that Inko here is wearing an Icelandic wool sweater. Well, you can always pick one of these up in Iceland, but I would recommend bringing something that you're used to wearing as far as a layer. So, we're talking like a reasonably weighted fleece, kind of a medium weight fleece is good. That's what I always wear, or a down puffy jacket, something like that. I would say like my go-to every single day, I'm wearing a lightweight merino base layer. I'm wearing a fleece vest, and then I have a down jacket that I'll throw over top. And that's for the colder days. Um, and then I'll have my rain jacket that goes on over top of that. And that's for the colder days. That does well for me. But I would recommend, you're going to want to have a base layer, you're going to want to have a warm layer, and then you're going to want to have a rain jacket. And if you're someone that runs cold, maybe consider adding an extra layer to that as well. Um, the concept with layers, of course, is to have more than you might need in a day, and then you can always take them off. But if you show up in Iceland with too few layers for some of our weather, and I'll say, we've had days when it's been raining with some wind. It's been around 40 to 50 in the heat of July. One of the places that we go to, Modra Dollar, just posting some videos in the second week of June there that they had about 6 inches of snowfall up there, and that's not unheard of for some of the places we're going to. Is getting snow into July at some of the higher altitudes. So layers are good. Don't go too overboard. You can always pick up an Icelandic wool sweater if you need another layer somewhere in Iceland. So my advice, definitely refer to the pre-departure briefing. If you're on this trip this year, you've got the pre-departure briefing. If you don't, contact the NatHab concierge to make sure you have one. But look at their packing list. It's really good. I've had my eyes on that, and I refer to it every year when I'm getting ready to head to Iceland. Good rain gear is a must. That includes waterproof pants. So waterproof pants, waterproof rain jacket, walking and hiking footwear. I already kind of covered that. Warm layers, and then that last arrow is to a nice warm hat. So I always have a toque or a ski cap with me as well. I've got a ball cap, so ball cap and ski cap for my head, and then I have a kind of a lightweight pair of gloves. Some people prefer heavier gloves, but I have kind of a lightweight synthetic pair of gloves that I'll use if it's very cold or windy, and that just helps keep my hands warm and allows me to still operate my camera. And then sunglasses, sunscreen, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, it's listed in the pre-departure briefing, but what I do want to say is, you might be reading through that pre-departure briefing and being like, oh, this seems a little excessive. It's not. Make sure you've got it. And yeah, perfect. Arrival details. So when you get to Keflavik Airport, so you'll be arriving from your international airport into Keflavik. You'll go through Icelandic customs, be reunited with your luggage, and then once you are kind of exiting the baggage area, there will be somebody there holding a NatHab sign and or have uh, a sign with your name on it. They will also be looking for NatHab logos, so just do have a look around in that airport um, to make sure that you're not walking past your shuttle driver. They're really good. Um, our crew that picks you up from there, and then it's about uh, a 1 hour shuttle from Keflavik to the Reykjavik hotel, the Saga Hotel in downtown Reykjavik, where you'll get checked in. Yeah, and just double check your travel details. If you arrive, a lot of international flights arrive in the morning, and so if you do have luggage, you are able to leave that luggage at the Reykjavik Saga until you check in for the day. So just double check your arrival times and make sure that everything's lined up there. They may not have a room for you unless you've booked one for the previous night. They don't do 8 a.m. Early check-in. So if that's something that you'd like, if you'd like to come off your flight and then arrive and just be able to check into the hotel, you'll probably have to book for the night before. But contact your NatHab representative, and they'll be able to sort you out with that or advise you with that. Um, yeah, and then like I was saying, make sure you've got your NatHub logos on. You know, that's nice if you got a hat or a jacket, one of our shirts or something that's got a NatHub logo, or on your baggage, just make sure you've got NatHub logo, the NatHub tags. It definitely makes it easier to find you at the airport, as you know, there might be a couple hundred people coming through customs and out the arrival gate around the same time. Um, Yes, and then one other thing with that, logos as well. If you have those on bags, you know, if you forget something somewhere along the way, you know, you left a little backpack, or you know, you've just forgotten it in the hotel room, or you left it at lunch somewhere. You know, we're very well recognized where we travel, and so they'll know who to get a hold of if something's left behind while we're in Iceland. So having those NatHub logos on is really good. Food, everybody. We are going to on this 16-day expedition. We're going to have a lot of variety. Now, I think something that maybe used to be more prevalent that is slowly changing as Iceland has really experienced kind of a tourism um, boom in the last 15 years. Is, you know, a lot of restaurants, especially the more remote we got, would just be it'd be fish and lamb and soups, and then they wouldn't have chicken or beef. Now that's still the case in some places, but at a lot of the South Coast restaurants in areas where there's more population, we're starting to see more variety. With that being said, everybody, the fish in Iceland is really good. The lamb in Iceland, um, that's your call. It's really good as well. They do their food very well, but we will be striving for variety wherever we go, and trying to have a good a good array of different foods, so that we don't only have fish and lamb for 2 weeks. Transportation, here is an image of one of our buses. It might not be the same color, but these are the buses that we use. They're Mercedes. They're 18 passenger vans, and we have, like I was saying, there's going to be myself. I sit up at the very front, Ragna, and then there's going to be additional seating. So it's almost 2 seats per person. Everyone will have a window seat, and then we'll have, you know, a seat that's going to have some snacks and stuff on it, and reading material and that kind of stuff. But that's the vessel. That's going to be our main source of transportation for the first 11 days. And then uh, once we transfer, or 12 days, sorry, once we transfer to the West Fjords, then we'll have more of a variety of transportation. But that's going to be our vehicle for the first 12 days. Now, when we talk about photography gear, again, there's a really great kind of overview of the stuff that you're going to need for this trip, or that you might like to have with you for this trip. Um, but that's all in the pre-departure briefing. I just wanted to go over the stuff that I'm going to bring and give you a bit of a background as to why I'm deciding to take it. Number one, and I think this is pretty important, is a sturdy camera harness or camera strap, something that you're comfortable with. You know, our days can be 10 to 12 hours in the field, going to different places for photography purposes. And it is really nice to have something comfortable that you can hold your camera with, so you don't always have it in your hands. And it's not, you know, swinging around if we're walking down an uneven path. It's really nice to have something that keeps that camera close. Now, I know that everyone, you know, everyone that comes on these trips has a varied history with their camera equipment and the way that they carry their cameras on trips. And so I'm not saying to do anything out of the norm. Just make sure that you bring the stuff that you're comfortable with, and that you're ready to carry that camera for long periods of time throughout the day. I bring a camera backpack, and then with that, I have my pack cover. My camera backpack also serves as my guiding backpack, so it's got a whole bunch of guiding supplies in it. So it's probably going to be bigger than most packs that'll come on board. But the main piece here is, you know, make sure that whatever pack that you bring, NatHub has some really nice packs that they send around. They have some nice collapsible packs, that kind of thing. Make sure that you're able to just have the equipment that you want for the day. We're often able to come back to the bus and reorganize stuff. So a lot of people will have kind of their larger, more sturdy camera backpack that they travel with, and then they leave that on the bus, and then they just take what they need for the excursion in a smaller pack, and then go out for a couple hours and then come back, and they're able to put stuff away and change out lenses, have all that kind of stuff there. So just make sure that whatever you're bringing into the field, you do have a way to either throw your camera into a dry bag or throw a pack cover on your backpack just in case it does get soggy. Yeah, that's kind of my advice there. I'm bringing my Nikon Z6 full frame mirrorless. That may, I've been getting in trouble looking at the Nikon website lately, so that may change by the time I get there. But either way, it'll be a full frame mirrorless. The lens that I'm gonna bring, and this is kind of my go-to lens for, I'd say 95% of the trip, is a 24 to 70, and that might change to a 24. I think it's a 24 to 120 f4. It's a super great versatile travel lens, and as far as landscape photography, I really like about 24 is great. I'm often shooting between 24 and 70, and sometimes I wish I had a little bit more. So anywhere from a 24 to 70 lens or a 24 to 120, something like that is going to be a really great versatile lens. Yeah, something about Iceland is the mountains. They're not tall and dramatic like the Swiss Alps. There's some areas where it looks a little bit like that, but they're not. It's not like the Swiss Alps or the rock like the Canadian Rockies, where you have just like these really jagged and steep peaks that are kind of flanking you on either side, where you might be more likely to want something like a 12 to 24 lens. I find that the given the volcanic history of Iceland versus kind of the tectonic kind of thrusting mountain building, the volcanic mountain building, they tend to be a little bit shorter and a little bit more gentle, and so the landscape is really big and far away, which is why I lean towards kind of the 24 to 70 or 24 to 120 to try to bring that a little bit closer. The 300 millimeter prime, I call that my luxury lens. It's an f4. It's not the 2.8. That's a big lens, and I commend anybody that carries one of those around with them because it's not a lightweight lens at all. But I call it my luxury lens because I really bring my 300 millimeter prime for one purpose, and that's for shooting puffins, or two purposes: for shooting puffins and for shooting humpback whales, or whales when we're whale watching. Though that I just love how crisp and sharp it is. But in particular for puffins, it's just it's just a great lens to have. So I call it my luxury lens because it's by no means, I've already got it covered when I bring my 150 to 600, and it's by no means necessary to have. It's just extra. I've concluded I'm going to carry around the extra 4 or 5 pounds for this lens for 2 weeks, so I can have it when I want to photograph those puffins. And then I have a 150 to 600. Your telephoto doesn't have to be a 150 to 600. That's just the one that I've got. I like it for birds. I like it for telephoto landscapes. Something I do is kind of telephoto panorama landscapes. Helps bring that landscape nice and close, but also, for birds and whales, wildlife, having that reach of 600 is super nice, not necessary. A lot of folks that come on these trips, they bring a 70 to 300 or an 80 to 400, or 100 to 400, something like that, and that's totally fine too. It'll give you plenty of reach. The lens that I have and I've had now for probably 7 years is that 150 to 600. Again, another piece of equipment that I find really useful is the tripod. Now the tripod I have, it's a Manfrotto. It's, the legs are in 3 pieces. Really fast to set up and take down. And the reason I bring my tripod is for mostly moving water. And moving water looks like waterfalls. It looks like the ocean waves crashing in. it looks like, you know, kind of smoothing a choppy lake, that kind of thing. But I really like having the option to put my camera on a tripod and get some of that smooth, that blurred water effect, as we will definitely be seeing a lot of waterfalls in Iceland, and we'll be spending a lot of time close to the ocean. So I really enjoy it for that purpose. Something else, that that I ended up using the tripod for as well was there was a day where the wind was like 50 miles an hour, and it was just nice to put my camera on the tripod, and actually the clouds were moving so fast that I ended up using the 10-second shutter speed and smoothing the clouds up, which I thought was really cool too. Polarizer, neutral density filter. Polarizer is really nice, takes reflection off the water, adds more vibrance to your pictures. In particular, if we have some sun in the sky, or kind of more of a blue sky day, really, really nice to have. Also takes a few stops off, or adds a few stops, which makes it more difficult to, or sorry, it makes it easier to lower your camera settings to capture blurred water. So polarizer is great for that. I also use neutral density filters. I think the one that I was using mostly was an ND8, which covered most of the bases. And then I have an ND8 and an ND 1000, but I don't really use the 1000. That's a bit excessive, and it kind of changes the tint or the color of my pictures as well. So the ND8 seemed to be fine. Polarizer, ND8, they're both helpful just to bring your shutter speed down enough to capture the blurred water. Microfiber towel, this one here, it's one of my favorite things. It's just, it's maybe like 2.5 or 3 feet wide by 2 feet. It's just this little microfiber towel, not a lens cloth, but a microfiber towel, which is great because we might be out and maybe it's spitting with rain, or we're out for an hour and it starts raining on the way back. It's just really nice to have to quickly sop up any rain droplets that land on my camera. And if it starts raining while we're out and I don't have my lens cover or something, I can just throw the microfiber towel on top of the camera, and it protects it in the interim till I can get to a dry place. And then I bring my laptop, personal thing. If you're comfortable not backing up your photos, that's up to you. For me, I'm backing up my photos throughout the trip, and I know a lot of people that come on these trips are backing up their photos every day, or every few days at the least, just to have that set up. So that's something else I bring. Great. Now we'll move to the trip overview. How am I doing for time? Okay, I'm going to be quick here. So trip overview, everybody. Day one, we're going to arrive in Reykjavik and have a welcome dinner. It won't be in a turf house like this. It'll be in a very nice restaurant in downtown Reykjavik, a short walk from our hotel. We'll head back to the hotel, and then day two, we are going to, basically, we get things started right away the next morning. And we jump in some helicopters, and we do a 2-hour flight from Reykjavik north over the area that is the Golden Circle, over the valley, the Rift Valley. You can see here kind of where there's the continental divide between the North American plate and the Eurasian plate, as they pull apart, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It's one of the only places where it's visible above the Earth's surface. So we'll do some very beautiful scenic flights there. We'll see Gleamer, the tallest waterfall in Iceland. We'll see the Thorisjökull Glacier. Um, and it's kind of this recently active volcanic region where the tectonic plates are pulling apart. And so it's very spectacular from the air. That'll be kind of 2 hours. Take us back to Reykjavik. We'll grab a quick lunch and then head into the Golden Circle region. Now, there's a few stops that are just so gorgeous here. We'll probably start in Thingvellir, which is the national park, and it's also the first place where, or basically where the Parliament of Iceland was formed some 900,000 years ago. But on the way and afterwards, we have lots of scenery shots to take. So this is Brarfoss, It's just a 5-minute walk after we drive a dirt road for a little bit to get to this beautiful location. We'll spend some time photographing that. Um, one of our last stops is going to be Gullfoss or Golden Falls, and this is kind of the furthest destination in the Golden Circle. And we're going to go here after dinner to avoid the many people that want to see this place. It's so beautiful at that time of night, especially if we have clear skies. As you know, you can get rainbows, you can get the sun cast across, but we'll be there a little bit later in the evening. We're also going to go to the geyser site, Stroker, as well as a number of other stops on the way. Next, the next day, we are going to head into Thorsmjork, or the Valley of Thor. This is an extraordinary valley with braided riverbeds, river crossings, situated in between a number of different ice caps. It's kind of gorges and rivers and a whole variety of colors and all kinds of stuff. And it's going to be a really fun day. We'll be out for 7 or 8 hours with this trip, just making stops, exploring, and taking pictures in the Valley of Thor. The next morning, we head to the Westman Islands, very young volcanic islands. It is they're just far enough away that Arctic foxes never made it there, so there's no predators, and so a lot of the small islands surrounding the main island of Heimaey are really phenomenal bird colonies. And so we'll take a 2-hour Zodiac while we're there. We'll go check out some of these bird colonies. We're also going to go on some walks around. You can see there on the left, there's a rock that kind of looks like an elephant. A little better from another angle, but that's it's a pretty special rock there. Anyways, really, really remarkable lava formations. The islands are only 15,000 years old, and there's the last large scale kind of land building eruption was in the 70s. They just had their 50th, or in the 60s, sorry, they just had the 50th anniversary of the Heimaey eruption not too long ago. And it's also has a really high concentration of Atlantic puffins. So the evening that we're there, it'll be our first opportunity to photograph puffins, and we're going to have a lot of opportunities throughout the trip to photograph puffins, but this will be kind of our introduction. We'll head out there to a known kind of puffin viewing location. We'll go for a little bit of a walk after dinner, and then spend an hour or so hanging out with the puffins. If they're there, they do go out to fish. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. Sometimes the weather makes it very hard for us to stand outside very long, but it's a really special space regardless, and there's tons of stuff to see on the Westman Islands. Extremely scenic. A couple of photos from the Westman Islands. Moving on, the next day is going to be, we'll spend a bit of time in the Westman Islands in the morning and early afternoon, and we're planning on leaving there by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we are having a field meal on the road. We're going to go to Seljalandsfoss, some of the famous South Coast waterfalls, Seljalandsfoss, which is pictured. We're going to go to Skogafoss. We're going to go to Dyrhole. There's a few sites around the Dyrhole Peninsula with vast expanses of black sand beaches. Extremely beautiful, extremely scenic place, and also kind of the time of day that we're going is super important too. This is one of the most popular sites on the whole South Coast, the last few places I've mentioned. So going in the evening makes a huge difference when it comes to being able to just hang out without crowds. Beautiful black sand beaches. You can see this is the view down towards Reynistiara Black Sand Beach, where there's columnar basalt and the three trolls there sitting out in the ocean. They're volcanic plugs. Just really, really beautiful, scenic. We'll see what we come across, and then before we get to the hotel, we'll do a little scenery shot around Vik as well. That's where the hotel is that we're staying, is in Vik i Myrdal. From there, the next day comes into it's really an extremely creative day. The Katla Geopark Skaftafell, the introduction to the Vatnajökull ice cap, um, Jökulsárlón Glacial Lagoon, Diamond Beach. We're gonna be taking a lot of pictures this day. It's a really special part of the south coast, and well, first we have to make a drive from Vik through one of the largest lava flows in all of Iceland from the Laki eruption in the 1700s, and then we're going to jump onto a Cessna, a small plane that has some really and we'll basically go for a number of flights this day because it seats three with windows, and we'll kind of rotate through to make sure everyone gets equal opportunity in the air. But we have braided riverbeds over top of the largest glacial outwash plain on Earth. And this is, from volcanic eruptions underneath the Vatnajökull ice sheet. It's extremely flat. The glacial water has no better way to flow through here than to kind of float along the surface like this in these extremely unique and constantly changing patterns. We'll also have a little peek at the Vatnajökull ice sheet and the large glacier in the area that comes down towards the coast. After that, we are going to kind of make a move towards the glacial lagoons. So we've got this is Jökulsárlón. It's got ice that's calving off of the glacier that's flowing about a couple miles away, and it tries to make its way towards the ocean. The wind blows it in every which direction, and it eventually spills out of the lagoon and onto the beach, where the water pushes it. The sea and the waves push it back towards the black sand beach, and the contrast of ice and ocean and sky and black sand makes for some really creative kind of photography opportunities. So we'll spend some time here, and we go back to Diamond Beach after dinner when the light is better and there's a lot less people in it. It's different every time. It's extremely beautiful. So after that day, we are going to start making our way into the older part of Iceland. A lot of this region is kind of the 10 to 14 million year old rock, and so the landforms change. Day 7, a big ticket item for us is stopping at the Stockness Peninsula, or Vestrahorn. This is a very lovely and well photographed mountain in Iceland, but it's never the same. And I've been there quite a few times now, and it's never the same both times. But you have kind of this jagged rock. It's gabbro, which is a kind of metamorphic rock versus basalt, and so it kind of forms up differently, erodes differently, and then the rock itself is also a different color. So it's really spectacular. However, the beach beneath is like a striking black sand beach, and on top of that, it's a shallow lagoon. So you get pooling water in there that allows for some really great reflections. Um, the scenery as well is extremely beautiful. We'll make a lot of stops en route to see what we can come across. But it's really an extraordinary kind of day of exploration. And before I continue, kind of one of the main focuses is going to be Vestrahorn. We'll probably spend a couple hours in that area, and then the rest of the day we're heading east. And I think that kind of Vestrahorn is a turnaround spot for a lot of people if they're kind of starting in Reykjavik. They do a 2 or 3 day trip and then they turn around and go back. Um, and so once we get to the East Fjords, this is very much kind of like a really special and hidden part of Iceland in the East Fjords. The next day we have 2 big ticket places to go and visit. One of them is Mjóifjörður, the other place is Borgarfjörður Estri. And so we're going to basically explore the East Fjords. This is, glaciated U-shaped valleys, carved basalt. We're going to head into Mjóifjörður, which I call kind of the fjord of waterfalls. It's got just, so many waterfalls coming from every direction. Mjøyfjordur basically means narrow fjord, and you can see it in the distance there after the switchback. But it's a switchback and dirt road to get in there. So we'll spend the morning and early afternoon in this area, and then after that we head to Borgarfjordur Estuary, and this will be puffin opportunity number 3 for us because we will have had the Westman Islands, we'll have Dyrhólaey, and then we'll have Borgarfjordur Estuary. And here, really special spot to basically pop up into a puffin colony that has been protected and maintained by the community since the 70s. And you just have these extremely good puffin photography opportunities. So we'll spend a good chunk of time here. And this shot here is something that I took with that 300 f4 prime. That's why I take it for a puffin portrait shot like this. And something like that. And they've got lots of burrows around. Oh yeah, and it's not just the puffins there. The scenery too is extraordinary. There's a lot of rhyolitic mountains, old rhyolitic mountains, and so we'll go check out some viewpoints around there after dinner, and then make our way back to our hotel in Egelstadter. The next day, we head into Lagerflot, and it's kind of a transition from the East Fjords into the Highlands, and we're gonna spend some time in the valley looking for Icelandic horses. We've got a good spot that we like to go to where we know there's usually some Icelandic horses around. It's not the only opportunity we'll have, but it's one of them. And then we're also going to be along Lagerflot, which is one of the largest lakes in Iceland. Although it's more of like a really slowed down river, but it's still extremely beautiful with glacial sedimentation and that kind of stuff. We are going to look for some canyons and waterfalls, and then we drive the old highway 1, the old dirt road that was replaced by a high-speed paved road. And you can see actually the stack of rocks here on the left is kind of the old markers for this road through this mountain pass that probably predated the dirt road that you see kind of winding its way up the hill there. So we enter the highlands and we're getting into one of the driest areas in Iceland. We're also getting into kind of the shadow of Askja caldera, which is one of the central volcanoes of Iceland. And so you get this like extraordinary kind of black sand desert in the alpine mixed in with colorful lichens and plants, and it's just so different and beautiful from the lush kind of southern coast that we've just been exploring. So we'll spend some time taking some pictures in this area and then make our way to Modradalur in the Highlands where we'll stay for that night. So after staying the night, the next day we basically make the journey to the Askja caldera. We're going to be doing a super Jeep tour here, all-wheel drive, very comfortable vehicles to get us up there. We're going to be leaving after lunch, staying out through the evening especially if it's sunny, we're going to get some really beautiful light. This is the Askja caldera. It's not always accessible. I sure hope we can make it there, but it's extremely colorful and exceptional photography. This is from one of the viewpoints along the way. You've got these, basically it's an underground river that flows underneath all the volcanic rock and then pops up in this spring and creates this little oasis in the middle of the highland desert. You've got kind of exposed basalt landscape. You've got all kinds of stunning stuff. This is Herðubreið, which is called the Queen of Iceland, and it's extremely spectacular to photograph as well, especially if we have beautiful light and there's no clouds over top of it. It's a subglacier eruption volcano that gives it kind of that steep cake-like appearance. We'll talk about that more on the trip. You can see it again there. Sunset, water on the basalt. It was such a fun day. Really, really beautiful landscape to spend a whole day with a Super Jeep exploring. The next day, we're getting back into some waterfalls and geothermal. And so we're going to head to Dettifoss, Selfoss, Lake Mývatn, Godafoss, and then end up in Akureyri. So we'll be leaving in the morning. We'll head to Dettifoss, which is the largest waterfall in Iceland by volume. Massive, massive drop, huge amount of water, extremely powerful, dramatic place to see. Really, really cool photography opportunities here. So we'll head there, and then we're going to head over to the Hefriar Namafjall geothermal area, where you've basically got all kinds of, you got mud pots, you've got volcanic terrain. We're kind of heading up to the north side of where the continental divide is, and so you're in an area with lots of geothermal activity and very recent volcanic eruptions. And we're going to check out this really cool geothermal plant, more of an on the way kind of thing to the VT crater from the Krafla eruption some years ago. It's yeah, and we'll pop by Lake Mivat. We might catch a glimpse of some migratory birds or some nesting birds, such as this beautiful horned grebe. It's just really pretty. Very, very beautiful scenery. And after that, we will kind of continue the day and end up in Akureyri, going to Godafoss on the way to our hotel for that night. Now, the following morning, day 12, Akureyri, we're going to go whale watching for a couple of hours in the fjord there, and then jump onto our chartered flight to the West Fjords. That's Akureyri there, the capital of the north. And then when we arrive in the West Fjords, the scenery sure does change. It is, again, one of the oldest parts of Iceland. We're talking, kind of the 10 to 14 million year old basalt from supervolcano eruptions over millions of years. Really, it's the least populous part of Iceland. And it's the most difficult to get to. So there's often very limited numbers of people here. If there are other travelers coming to this area, most often they come off of a cruise ship into Isafjordur. And so we're going to spend 3 days in the West Fjords. You can kind of see it up there in the top left, that big peninsula with stars on it. But one of those days we're going to go whale watching, and there's nowhere quite like the West Fjords to go whale watching, just with the scenery behind. But you got humpback whales. We're often the only vessel out looking for whales as well, which is super cool. And then we're going to go to the famous Vigor Island, which is kind of a private wildlife sanctuary, and has a whole variety of nesting birds on it as well. And Vigor Island will be puffin opportunity number 4. See what I mean? Just like really, really beautiful terrain, background to photograph humpback whales. And puffin opportunity number 4 for the trip. Pretty stunning. And then our last day in the West Fjords, we're going to have a private bus, and we're going to head to a few places. One of them is the hidden gem, Dinyandi. We're going to check out some of the small villages, definitely like a lesser traveled area. And we're also going to go to the 2,000-foot viewpoint at Bolafilla Mountain. We'll try to pick the time of day when there's no clouds up there, because it is a 2,000-foot high viewpoint you can drive up to. So we'll check that out and get some photos up there. But here's some pictures from the area. Really just lovely. That's from the Bolafjall lookout. That's Dinyandi. And sorry. And then one more day, of course, is the Svalvolgar Circle Super Jeep. So this is 4x4 exploration of the rugged west coast. We head way out onto this peninsula, 4x4 access only. Really, really up close and personal opportunity to look at some of the geologic features of the area. Kind of volcanic dikes and layers of basalt and kind of the exposed west coast of the West Fjords. And then it's just really cool. Super pretty area to explore. And then, the next day, that afternoon, once we're done that trip, we'll head back to town, have an early dinner, and then fly back to Reykjavik, back to the Reykjavik Saga Hotel. And then day 16, everyone will depart. And that is the expedition. In conclusion, folks, it's an extraordinary photography expedition, 16 days, almost guaranteed to get some extraordinary photos. But we'll work on that together. It is so beautiful, and I have not seen another itinerary that's as comprehensive as this one as far as exploring all of Iceland. So I'm really excited to meet those that are joining me this summer, and really excited to meet those that are going to join me on future expeditions. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Eddie. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. All right, let's get to some of these questions. So, if I'm a novice photographer, is this trip for me?
So I mean, everyone kind of is gonna come on these trips with a different skill level. But what I would say is, with NatHab trips for photo expeditions, we are welcoming of all levels of photography. I think the most important thing to note is that this trip is really going to be focused on photography, and so the most important prerequisite is that you're very interested in learning photography, and spending the extra time that it takes to get some of these shots, and knowing that activities on the trip are all based around getting really great photos. So as a novice, absolutely, we can work together to kind of improve your skills. Everyone has to learn, and grow, and so that's a big part of the trip, is just working with individuals to make sure we're getting where we want to be. Um, but the most important thing is just know that it's a photo trip, and we're extremely photographically focused the entire time.
Great to know. So, on that note, how many guides will there be on the trip, and how big is the group in general?
So we have an Icelandic guide, who will be is for days 1 to 12. We have an Icelandic guide who will be our driver, and local guide, and then you'll have one expedition leader, which will be myself for this year. Um, And then we'll also have other guides that we meet along the way. There'll be super Jeep drivers, there'll be Zodiac drivers, and there'll be people working with us, to make sure we're getting to the place. But there'll be one local guide, one expedition leader, and then a number of other kind of location guides.
Great,
Oh yeah,
thanks.
sorry. And then max group size on these photo expeditions at this point is 9.
9. Perfect. Great. Thank you. So, one of our guests notes that in the pre-departure briefing, it's mentioned that an ultra-wide lens might be needed for one particular waterfall. Is that something that you agree with, or can we get away with just a regular wide angle lens?
So, there's going to be, let me think about that. So there is a possibility that you will want an ultra wide for something, um, whether it's a particular waterfall or something like that. The waterfall that I'm thinking of, I mean, there's a couple of places that would be really cool to do an ultra wide, and I've kind of compensated but for that sometimes with with, what do I call it? By doing panoramas, and basically using my 24 mil and turning that into an ultra wide, by stitching together like 6 photos. But that might be a bit over the top for some folks. So yeah, like there's no harm in having an ultra wide, for some of those waterfalls. I can think like Cellulans Foss would be really good for that. And then if we make it to Cavernu Foss and some of these other these kind of big ticket South Coast item, waterfalls, say an ultra wide would be good for that for sure.
Do we have to worry too much about weight limits, or is that part of what is calculated for our camera gear?
Yeah, so on these photo expeditions, basically, we've been having a bit of a conversation about this, um, uh, with the back at the office. So when it comes to photo limits, think about what you can bring on an international flight and carry with you on one of those international flights. For me, that's usually I have a camera bag and then I have a personal item, which is my laptop bag. And my camera bag probably weighs around 25 pounds. My camera bag probably weighs 7 to 10 pounds, or sorry, my laptop bag weighs 7 to 10 pounds. Um, and I personally haven't had any issues getting that into Iceland. Though the one place where you can see in our pre-departure briefing, we have kind of luggage considerations. Um, the one place is this is coming from our charter flight and the domestic flight from uh, Akureyri to the West Fjords and then the West Fjords to Reykjavik. All that I would say is basically if you can get your stuff to Iceland on an international flight, um, and you have a place to store it and that kind of stuff, we can figure it out once we're here. The worst case scenario would be that you'd have to take your camera equipment out of your bag and then check a bag, but I don't even think that's going to happen. They've been pretty relaxed the times that I've been there, but something can always come up. If you're worried about, if you're someone who's got, like a Pelican case with 60 pounds of lenses, in that case, that's not really a carry-on item in most cases, and you should definitely look at checking something like that. But there is the ability to do a little bit of negotiating at the counter when we're in Akureyri and in Isafjordur and the West Fjords coming back. But yeah, I will just say I haven't had any issues with it, and again my check bag is about 25 pounds, or sorry, not my check bag, my carry-on camera backpack's about 25 pounds with everything, and then my laptop bag is another 7 to 10, and that seems to be a-okay.
Good to know. Thank you. So, can you give us some hints on what we'll need to know about protecting our camera and gear from the weather on this trip?
Yeah, I mean the most important thing is having some kind of you could have either like a simple cover that could, it could be like a pack cover that you slide over your camera if the weather's getting really bad, or if you have your camera in a backpack, having it in a pack cover. You could have a dry bag. Um, some folks have like that I've seen on these trips. They have it's like a proper waterproof camera kind of sleeve that slides over the camera, and they can cover the camera fully. With my setup, I have like it's kind of like a pack cover for my camera that works in conjunction with my camera harness. Um, yeah, I mean there's lots of different ways. Um, and then yeah, some people, sometimes we might just look outside and maybe the wind will be 30 miles an hour and it'll be raining, and we'll be like, yeah, you know what, maybe we're not. This is not the greatest photographic thing, but we will walk up over the hill and just have a look and see what it looks like. So just making sure that you have something to protect your camera. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, or it can be fancy, um, but just a waterproof cover, water resistant cover. There's lots of that kind of stuff available um, online or at camera shops.
So, for the puffin headshot, you mentioned that you shot at 300 millimeter. Was that uncropped?
It might have been a little bit cropped, but that was mostly uncropped. That puffin was about like 12 feet away,
Gotcha.
maybe less.
Going back to your camera harness, can you describe exactly what that is for us, please? We've got a couple of questions about
Sure. My camera harness, it's kind of like, is anyone familiar with like a baby carrier?
that.
It's basically, it's instead of it being a single strap that goes around my neck, it's a harness that goes on my chest. Um, yeah, I mean, the model that I use is called a cotton carrier. And I think there's some other ones by Black, is it Black Rapid? Um, yeah, but it's been super helpful for sure.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about footwear for a second. And now, if I had like a brand new pair of trail running shoes, is that something that would be okay, or do you recommend a sturdier type of hiking boot?
Trail running shoes would be great for a lot of our day-to-day stuff. Um, you might be happier if they're waterproof, but otherwise, like on the south coast, for example, when we're going to uh, like Seljalandsfoss and Skogafoss and Reynisfjara Beach and Deerhole and all that kind of stuff, having kind of really sturdy hiking boots isn't super necessary. But if the weather is a little bit inclement or the ground's really wet, you may be happier with a waterproof pair of shoes. But if your trail running shoes are waterproof, that'd be great. But trail running shoes also have pretty good, pretty good traction, so that would be good too. But do make sure that that's not your only pair. You're gonna want, you'll probably want some ankle support for some of the other stuff we do, um, especially some of the longer stuff. It makes more sense to have a more sturdier pair of footwear for that.
Great, thanks for the advice. So let's get to the real important question. Now, when we're out there, we're taking shots and we're out for a while. And if I need to go to the restroom, are there going to be facilities for me?
Yeah, we definitely plan around that for the most part. So I'd say like 95% of our stops are close to a restroom. There's some times where we will be, um, driving uh, driving for 2+ hours through black sand desert and volcanic terrain in a super jeep, and the bathroom will be an outhouse, um, or more conveniently, the bathroom will be behind that rock over there. But most places do have um, facilities. Some of our longer excursions, we may be uh, quote roughing it end quote a little bit more.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for covering that one. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, that will be the last question that we do have time for today, Eddie. So I'd like to throw it back to you for some closing comments.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Always a pleasure to present for Natural Habitat Adventures, and I really look forward to these trips and look forward to meeting those on the expedition. Wishing you all a great day and take care. Thank you.
And thank you, Eddie, for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us Thursday for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.